Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to this psychology webinar. Today, my name is Mr. Darji. I'm one of the psychology teachers. I'm also a chartered psychologist and I also have some other roles within the college. What I would like to do today is just to give you a bit of an overview of psychology and actually teach you a little bit of content in psychology that we're kind of taught on our courses, just to give you a bit of a feel for some of the things that we kind of talk about in psychology. So all I want to do, just to check that the Q&A function, there's a chat function in the bar there. So I just want to kind of check if this is kind of working as well for you guys. So can you just kind of let me know that you can see my screen? Can you just mention in the Q&A? Fantastic, well done. So I know now that the chat is working as well. Brilliant. So throughout the session, feel free to add some questions, some thoughts on there. And towards the end, I will review some of those questions at the end and also give you an opportunity to ask questions as well. But if you do have a thought, just post it on the message chat, of course. I will then kind of review those and kind of have a look at those towards the end. Right. Okay. So the purpose of the session is just to give you a bit of a brief overview of psychology at WQE, and to also kind of look at some content and get a feel for some of the kind of topics that you might be taught. So I'm going to pick a particular topic, a particular study, and we're going to talk about it a little bit and give you an opportunity to make some contributions in using the message chat. And as I said, a question and answer opportunity towards the end. So at the college, we do the A-level course, we've got a BTEC course, and we've got a GCSE course. So you would have known about these already, but I'm just flagging that up just in case if you did want any kind of further information on that. The information's on the website for the various psychology courses on there. So I've put the website link there for you just to kind of note down if you needed to go back to that. But you'll find the information sheets there. So quick overview about what psychology is. It is the scientific study of mind and behavior. In the grand scheme of things, if you were to compare it with things like chemistry, biology, physics, this is a relatively new science. A lot of the advances happening in psychology happening over the last 150 years. But it's an evolving science. So psychology is always kind of looking at new techniques, new technologies, new methods of trying to research and study the mind and behavior of people. And so the aim here is to try to explain and try to understand and try to predict and change the behaviors and mental processes of others. And this is what psychology ultimately is trying to do when working, especially with human beings. It is driven by research and theory. So what that means is that if new research comes along and challenges existing theories, then sometimes theories get changed, theories are revised. So depending on the research and the theories, it's always an evolving type of science with different ideas, different methods that are being kind of employed as well. So we cover lots of different areas. Psychology is such a vast kind of field. Within that field of psychology, there's the study of obedience, memory function, depression, stress, conformity, biological processes. And it's really useful to know that it acknowledges biological processes within the subjects of psychology, and you have to in order to understand human behavior. So it delves into this kind of debate of, are we a product of our nature or are we a product of our nurture? Is it the environment that shapes us, or is it our biology that shapes us? So it's got real application to the wider world in fields like mental health, education, so understanding society and groups within society. So that's psychology in a nutshell. But obviously, if you did want to know a little bit more and you want to delve a little bit more, this website is particularly useful to give you a good intro into psychology. So it's simply psychology.org, and you do get a good feel for what psychology is about from that site. So please do feel free to have a look at that. Right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through a particular topic in psychology, and I've chosen the topic of looking at conformity and social roles and social influence, and this is an area of psychology that looks at society's impact on individuals and vice versa. So I've picked this really famous, well-known study in psychology to talk about with you today. And this is Zimbardo's 1971 Stanford prison experiment. And, you know, really well-known study that was kind of carried out by Philip Zimbardo and his team in the US. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this, and I'm going to give you some further reading links that if you wanted to kind of look at that further. But I'm going to pose some questions. I'm going to pose you a question. I'm going to expect, if you can, please, to contribute a few answers and thoughts, okay, about this study. Okay, so pay attention and do take on board some of the things that we're kind of saying, and I will leave the slides up a little bit, just so that you can kind of, you know, pick out some of the bits and pieces that you can kind of see on there. But I'm going to talk you through it. Okay. So Zimbardo in the 70s was interested in looking at social roles and finding out whether the brutality reported among guards in American prisons was due to the sadistic personalities of the guards or had more to do with the prison environment. Okay. So he's trying to kind of see, is it within the person to act quite sadistic, or is it to do with the environment of a prison that creates someone to kind of act in such a way? So what Zimbardo did is he gained 24 male college students from the US and Canada, and they were paid about $15 per day to participate in this study. Okay, these candidates were chosen because they were mentally and physically healthy. They were also a very similar age, education, race, social class, and so forth. Okay, so because of their similarities, because they're all undergrad, they're all college students as well, they were considered as kind of equal to each other at the start. Okay, so what Zimbardo did with these participants, so remember, he's recruited these college students, and what he's got them to do is he's allocated 50% of those participants to be a guard, a prison guard, and the other 50% to be prisoners. Okay, and this was completely random. Okay, so remember, they're college students, they're not legally prison guards or prisoners. They've just been allocated the role of a guard or a prisoner, and this was completely random. Okay, the guards were given no training about how to be guards. They were so these college students who have now been told that they're guards were made to set up their own rules, okay, about how they want to run this prison. Now, the prison was not a real prison. It was carried out in the basement of Stanford University. So the place of work of Philip Zimbardo, in the basement, they created a prison. Now, the participants did not know they were in the basement of Stanford University in a mock-up prison, because they were blindfolded and they were taken to this location. So over the course of this experiment, they treated the prisoners just as they would be treated in a real jail. But remember, it was up to these guards to decide how they wanted to run the prison. So, as I said earlier, all these prisoners were blindfolded when they arrived there. So they didn't know they were in the basement of Stanford University. To them, it looked like a prison. Okay, and they were strip searched and inspected for lice, just like would happen in a prison. And they were given ID numbers and hair caps. And they were forced to wear ankle chains. Now, all of this was part and parcel of trying to kind of remove their individuality of the individual by not calling them by names, calling them by ID numbers, forced to wear ankle chains and so forth, and put on prisoner outfits as well. So this is all to kind of, you know, strip these individuals of their individuality and to kind of make them fall in line in becoming prisoners. So what did they find when they put these college students, half of them being guards, half of them being prisoners, and they were left to just run this prison themselves? What kind of things did they find? Well, the punishments invented by the guards became so severe as the experiment went on. Okay, so remember, these guards were just making up punishments and making up rules as they went along. So they did things like made disobedient prisoners, forcing them to do push-ups during the, you know, in the middle of the night, placed in solitary confinement as a punishment, had things taken away, were verbally harassed. And the guards, as I say, it got a lot more kind of severe as the experiment kind of went on, to the point where they had to stop the experiment much earlier than anticipated because of the level of verbal abuse that was kind of being kind of put out there from the guards. And of course the kind of the consequences of kind of, you know, being mentally traumatized by what was kind of happening in this. So obviously it became quite extreme. The prisoners initially resisted being treated poorly, and there was a rebellion on the second day. But when punishments became harsher, the prisoners started to fall in line, started to listen to kind of what the guards were saying. Okay. A prisoner in particular, this is prisoner 8612, experienced disorganized thinking, uncontrollable crying and rage, and left the experiment. A few other prisoners left later on. The experiment felt so real to the participants that even though the researchers said they could quit, the prisoners felt that they couldn't. Okay. And the researchers also started to forget that the experiment wasn't real and tried to cover up the abuses they witnessed. So this is quite serious. This became quite intense for the prisoners in particular. So the question that I'm trying to pose you right now, knowing what you know now from this study a little bit, so just bear in mind some of the things that we've kind of said, and I'm going to give you a moment to kind of collect your thoughts and write a few things in the chat. I want you to kind of ask yourself the question and then try to reply in a minute or so. What does this study tell us about human behavior? So you've got this notion of, we've got some college students. We've put half of them in allocated to the role of a guard, half of them allocated to the role of a prisoner. We're basically saying, look, sort yourselves out for a week or so, and let's see what happens. But now we know what the results were. You know, the guards became quite aggressive. The punishments became more severe, and the prisoners started just to fall in line. Okay, even though, remember, no one is legally a guard or no one is legally a prisoner in all of this. It's all an experiment. Okay, but the consequences were quite harsh. So I want you to kind of answer the following two questions for me, please. Okay, what does this study tell us about human behavior? And do you think it was right for Zimbardo to carry out this study? Okay, are there any problems? Can you see any problems about this study? Okay, right. When you come across psychology and you come across research, there is no perfect study. Okay, there will always be criticisms. There'll always be evaluation. And that's what I want you to think about here. I want you to be able to critically analyze this piece of research that you've just heard me talk about. Okay, so what does this tell us about human behavior? And do you think it was right for Zimbardo to carry out this study? As much detail as you can. So I'll give you a couple of minutes just to write a few things in the message chat, please. So off you go. Just write a few things, okay, in relation to these questions. Thanks, and I will have a quick look. Okay, thank you so much, folks, for kind of responding. Okay, so I'm going to have a quick look. Yes, okay, this is a very good question. Okay, right, so Elise kind of put a question. Was this study not debunked? Dr. Zimbardo confessed years later to encourage the prison guards to act more violently. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that came out post study many years later, and there's still always things that come out now. The study is still valid in the sense that it does demonstrate that if you give people social roles, people live up to those social roles. Okay, so if you tell someone that they're a guard, all of a sudden power gets to them and they start to kind of act in ways that aren't them. They adopt and take on a new role, okay, that of a guard. They're no longer a college student, they're now a guard. And so what we're trying to see is, can this be applied to anything in society? There were some other issues about the study. For example, Dr. Zimbardo was actually more involved in being the prison warden, if you like, as well. So he was kind of calling the shots. So not only was he a researcher, he was also directly involved in giving instructions to the guards. So yeah, that's a really good question. Thanks, Elise, for that question. But still, it is still used. It's still valid. It still does demonstrate something about the things that kind of occur. So got some comments here. Human behavior can change when put in a position of power. Yeah, that's really good. Humans are easily adapted to their surroundings. Yeah, that's good. Does this tell us that it's natural and easy to turn to aggression in humans when there are no existing rules? You have to make your own. Yeah, okay, very good. It shows that when humans are given advanced power, it can change for worse. People can be easily manipulated. People change to the status or role. Problems, it can be dangerous, risky. Yeah, okay, I'm going to kind of highlight that a little bit. Demonstrates how impressionable the participants were to all the. Yeah, very good. Yeah, this study could tell us that when a role is posed on an individual, they feel a duty to follow through with it. Yeah, that's very good. The study tells us that people play the social roles they expect to play. Yeah, excellent, very good. Okay, seeing some lots of really good kind of comments there, folks. Okay, and I say in a class, this is the kind of thing that you're going to be wanting to do. You know, you're going to be taught some content and maybe some studies, and you want to kind of be able to kind of think of kind of critically analyzing it in some way. You know, what's good about it, what's not so good about it. What does this mean for human beings? Does this help shed light on the nature of kind of human beings and what makes them tick and what makes them kind of operate and function in society? Yeah, excellent. Thank you so much. I've just been kind of flicking through the rest of your kind of answers. Really good. Okay, so we've got some common themes there and some things that we've just been kind of talk about, which is really good, really excellent, really well done. Right, let's just close that down. In terms of the question at the end about is it right for Zimbardo to carry out the study, that becomes an ethical question in a way. If you were to look at ethics and you look at the things like psychological harm, you know, potential physical harm, were participants able to leave the experiment so easily? That's something known as the right to withdraw. These are kind of concepts that might make you question, was it right for Zimbardo to carry out this study? On the flip side of that, you might also consider, well, has it been useful to carry out the study because we learn a lot more about abusers of power in institutions like prison environments where you have got guards and prisoners? Are there abuses of power in certain institutions and certain places that whereby we can apply the lessons learned from Zimbardo to these kind of places? So I'm just throwing a question out there. That's, you know, these are all kind of implications for pieces of research. And to say, no research is kind of perfect. Of course, there are always going to be kind of flaws, but sometimes it's useful to kind of see, well, can this be applied to anything? Can this help to explain anything in human society? So again, thanks so much for your contributions on that. Let's just keep going. Okay, now if you ever did want to know more about this, there is an official website, and you can note this down if you wanted to. And there's an official website for the Stanford Prison Experiment, and there are some of the slides that kind of talk you through the finer details of the study. I've just really given you a very brief overview. But if you wanted to know more about it, you can kind of go to those places. Of course, also on YouTube, and also on various other kind of stream services, there have been kind of documentaries on the Zimbardo prison experiment, in which case they also detail some of the things that we've just been talking about, the flaws of the experiment, the controversies, the ethical aspects of it, but also the implications. Can this help to explain things that happen in the world today? So feel free to kind of delve into those, and then you also kind of get a feeling for the study more holistically, because I say I've just kind of just given an overview of that particular kind of study. Right, so I'm hoping that was okay. That just gives you a little taste of things. What I want to do, I want to dedicate a little bit of time, is to give you the opportunity to ask me some questions about the psychology course and things like that. And I have prepared some slides as well with some frequently asked questions. So depending on what I'm seeing in the chat bar, I'm happy to kind of share those as well, so that everyone kind of knows generally what the frequently asked questions are in psychology. So I've been doing this many years now, so I've got a bit of a sense of the kind of questions that students tend to ask when they're embarking and thinking about studying psychology at WQE. So I've got some frequently asked question-y responses prepared, but I'm going to have a look in the question box. So this is your opportunity, guys, just to ask a few questions in the chat bar. Okay. Right, brilliant. Okay, so some of you started. This is excellent. Okay. Right, so how many lessons of psychology would we have a week? Okay, so you would have 4 lessons of psychology a week. Okay, and they're just over an hour each lesson, and so that's kind of what you do there. Will we have this experiment as a topic? Yes, this study will feature on the A-level syllabus. So yes, it will. It is there. How is the course assessed? Okay. So the course is assessed through exams. Okay. There will be assessments and mock assessments throughout, but ultimately for the A-level course, there are 3 exam papers that you take at the end of the 2 years. But before that, you'll have mock assessments to do. For the BTEC in applied psychology, there is a mixture of assessment and coursework. Okay. What sort of questions are there in the exam? So what I'd encourage you to do, if anyone's here is looking at trying to work out the styles of the questions, go to the AQA website, okay, and type in psychology A-level, and you'll be able to look at past papers, and you'll get a sense of the types of questions that you kind of get in psychology. For the A-level, you will get a mixture of short answer questions, multiple choice questions, but also larger essay questions that are worth about 16 marks. Okay, so for the BTEC, smaller questions with 9-mark type essays, but also coursework with a BTEC. Okay, so that's that. I would suggest that you kind of go to those websites. So if you're interested in the A-level, then go to AQA website for psychology and just type that in Google and you get that. And also for BTEC, if you're interested in the BTEC, then it's Pearson's. So you want to type in Pearson, applied psychology, past papers, and you'll get a sense of some of the kind of kind of questions there and what the exam papers actually look like. So are we going to look at into more experiments? Yeah, there are other experiments out there. So I'm just thinking from the top of my head. There's quite a few other areas. So Milgram is another one. So if you wanted to jot Milgram down, you can do a bit of Googling about Milgram, Milgram study on obedience. And there are some YouTube videos about Milgram's experiments as well. Loftus and Palmer's study in leading questions is another famous one. Ash's study, Ash is spelled A-S-C-H. Ash's study into conformity is another one. Okay, so that's something that you might want to kind of have a look at as well if you're trying to kind of be ahead of the game with things and to kind of look at some of those studies. So does psychology A-level help for psychology at uni? Yes, it does. It's not necessary to do psychology at uni, but it does help. So those studies, like we've just been saying, knowing the theories about psychology, and this, I guess, is with my psychology hat on, really speaking as a psychologist, kind of gone through that process. I found doing A-level psychology really useful at studying psychology at undergraduate and beyond, because you get the foundations of the theories and knowledge. You get an understanding of the basics of research methods and the ways psychologists carry out research. So all that kind of foundation type work allows you to kind of build upon that at university. So yeah, it does help for psychology at uni, but it's not necessary to do psychology at uni, if that makes sense, but it will help. Which block of the psychology lessons? That's an unknown. That will depend on your timetable based on your other subject combinations. So you'll only know that once you have your timetable. Whether you do the A-level or BTEC is going to be down that's going to be down to yourself, really. I would suggest that you read the information sheets on both courses carefully and to decide what's best kind of for you. Okay. Some students like the mixture of doing some coursework and doing some exam-based stuff. Some students want to just focus on the exams. And it might also depend on universities as well. Some universities may prefer points from A-level subjects. Some may not mind how those points for UCAS come about. So that will depend upon yourself and what your study patterns are like. It will also depend upon your entry requirements as well, because there are different entry requirements for BTEC and compared to the A-level, and maybe also dependent upon what you're thinking of doing in the future as well. So my advice would be to research that carefully, look at those information sheets really carefully on the website, and you know, to help you make a decision better there. We will touch upon bystander effect. That is in there, but it's not going to be in much detail, but it is part of kind of part of psychology. I'm trying to kind of flip. I'm running out of time, so I'm just trying to kind of pick out a few more kind of questions that I kind of can kind of see. Will biology play a big part in our psych? Yes, there will be a significant portion that will link in with biology. Okay, and that's because you need to know about the brain, you need to know about the endocrine system, you need to know about things like neurotransmitters, hormones. You need to kind of know about the kind of, you know, an understanding about genetics a little bit as well. So are we a product of our genes, our neurochemistry, our brain function? So yeah, there will be elements of biology in there, and you will need to kind of know, you know, certain areas of the brain. You will need to know kind of parts of the endocrine system, looking at things like synaptic transmission and neurons and things like that. So those are the kind of things that you're going to kind of need to be able to kind of do. What textbooks and revision guides should we get? Okay, you will be given a textbook. Okay, and the textbook will be issued from that, and then take some direction then from your teacher. So you will be given a booklet actually. So for BTEC, you'll be given a textbook. For psychology A level, you'll be given a booklet. Okay, and your teacher will then be able to kind of suggest, with regards to revision guides and so forth, that you'll be able to kind of access. Okay. Right. Okay. Well, I think we've run out of time. So I know there's still more questions. Okay, but that's a good thing. It stimulated a lot of thought. Okay. I'm hoping that you found that useful, guys, just to help you make a little bit more of a decision moving kind of forward. And that's all we have time for, really. Okay. So thanks a lot. As I said, go to the website, look at those course information sheets, read them carefully, do a bit of Googling, do a bit more research, have a look at the exam boards on the websites, the AQA for A level, Pearson's is BTEC. Have a look at those, and hopefully that will then help you make a kind of decision on things. But in the meantime, you can kind of have a look at looking at some of those studies that we've been talking about, just to give you a feel for psychology. And don't forget that website, Simply Psychology. There's some good introduction stuff on psychology there as well. Okay, thanks a lot, folks, for your attention and for listening, and for your questions and your contributions. And I'll see you. Thank you. Bye now.